This is Midwest Moxie, a show about our region's visionary entrepreneurs and the experiences that shape them. I'm your host, Kathleen Gallagher, Executive Director of Five Lakes Institute. Nina Jenkins didn't start out thinking about bedbugs. The Penn State researcher was studying how insect-killing fungal spores could combat locusts, houseflies, and Asian longhorn beetles. But all that changed when a graduate student asked Nina if her fungal spores would work on bedbugs. Sure enough, bedbugs were the perfect target. So in 2017, Nina founded ConidioTec to deliver a novel, non-toxic bedbug-fighting product to pest management companies. 8 years later, in 2025, the Pennsylvania company sold its flagship product to Kansas City, Missouri-based Rockwell Labs for an undisclosed 8-digit price. Joining Nina today is Andrew Reed, Senior Vice President for Research at Penn State, which was a critical partner in helping Nina commercialize her technology. Nina and Andrew, welcome to Midwest Moxie.
Thank you, Kathleen. It's great to be here.
Apprehend, ConidioTec's flagship product, is an oil-based formulation whose active ingredient is Beauveria bassiana, which is a naturally occurring fungal spore. How does this product, Apprehend, actually work?
So the fungal spores are formulated in oil so that we can spray them on the surfaces where we know that the bedbugs will walk. And when they emerge out of their harborage, they walk over the treated surface and they pick up the spores. And it's a little bit like when we're at the beach, and I think we've all done that. We've been in the water and we want to get to our shoes without transferring the sand into our socks and shoes. And you just can't do it. It only takes 2 steps on the sand and the bottom of your feet are covered in sand particles. And it's just the same when a bedbug crawls over a surface that's had Apprehend applied. All of the spores sticks to its legs and its body, and it then takes them back to the harborage. And those spores can transfer from one bedbug to another. They like to huddle up together. I don't know if anybody's seen photographs of bedbug infestations, but they all sort of huddle together in these clumps. And the spores are transferred by direct contact to one another. And then the spores germinate and they penetrate directly down through the cuticle, and they grow in the blood system of the bedbug. So eventually the bedbug dies, and it's about 3 to 10 days of basically starvation, where the fungus is growing in its blood system and using all of its energy resources to sustain the growth of the fungus. So it's kind of dose dependent. More spores will make a bedbug die more quickly, but that's essentially how it works.
It's interesting. You mentioned their blood system. The biology and the habits of bedbugs are very important in terms of where these pest controllers put the Apprehend. And it has to do with blood. Tell us about that.
Oh, yeah. So bedbugs don't live on us. And interestingly, they don't tend to live in the sheets and the blankets until things get really bad. They live away from people and they hide. A lot of people think bedbugs are invisible, but they're not. They're just really good at hiding. Adults are about the size of a flat apple seed. So bedbugs come out to take blood when they detect a human present. And they detect it, first of all, when a human is breathing in the room, because it elevates the level of carbon dioxide in the room, and that wakes them up. They're stimulated to start moving, and then they'll host seek and they'll home in on the warmth of a human body and also the human odors. So to understand that bedbugs have to do this process, it means that if you can put a product down where you know they're going to walk, you don't actually have to find them in every single hidden crack and crevice, because they have to take a blood meal to move from one life stage to the next. So we can rely on their natural biology and behavior to apply the product in key areas. And it reduces time for the technician when they're doing this. And it also reduces the amount of prep work that the client has to do. So if anybody knows of anyone who's had a bedbug infestation, they may hear this nightmare story about the person having to empty all of their clothes out of every single drawer, every single closet, and put them through the laundry and seal them in black trash liners until the bedbug infestation has gone away, and it can take weeks and weeks and weeks. So it's extremely disruptive.
And all the chemical spraying, you're worried about all this stuff getting sprayed all over your house. And with this, you're just putting it down and they're walking through it, right? And it's natural. It's not toxic.
That's right. There's no toxicity to it at all. And yes, it's not sprayed inside drawers or anything like that, like the standard chemicals used to be. So yeah, it's a very minimal application with no toxicity whatsoever. And of course, the fungus can't infect humans or pets. We went through the whole regulatory process to demonstrate that. So yeah, it's essentially a very, very safe and non-toxic way of controlling the population, while also having a benefit of not causing all of the disruption that traditional methods caused.
So we've established so much about bed bugs and about these spores, these naturally occurring spores, that all works. But there's the part about doing the startup. You were an academic. You know all this because you studied it for so long. You went through an organization, state-funded in Pennsylvania, called Ben Franklin Technology Partners. You went through their 10-week boot camp, and it was transformational. Tell us how.
Oh, goodness, yes. So, I mean, I don't know if anybody's ever had a good idea and spoken to a friend or somebody and said, hey, I've got this really excellent idea. Well, I knew that the fungus for bedbugs was a great idea, but the response I was getting as I was talking to people was almost always, well, you'll need to write a business plan. And I can't tell you how many pits in my stomach that phrase gave me, because, I mean, I did an undergraduate degree in applied biology. I did a PhD based on research, and I didn't choose to do business studies for a very good reason. So I don't know anything about how to write a business plan. So the Ben Franklin program was amazing because it followed a philosophy, I think, called the lean startup model. And that breaks down businesses into component parts. They actually use a matrix, and you define different parts of the business, like who are your customers? What is your value proposition for those customers? What is your supply chain into the company, and what's the supply chain out? How does it look? And it broke everything down into logical pieces. And one of the most useful parts of this course that we did was that we had to go back after each week's session and do customer discovery, which involved phoning up, cold calling people who we thought might be customers for our technology. So I started phoning up hotels, and they weren't particularly interested. But when I was phoning professional pest managers, who are also called PMPs, professional pest management, they became very interested, and they told me what the issues were with their current protocols for bed bugs and what they would want in a product. And it helped inform our strategy on how we were going to sell this. No, we weren't going to sell it into hotels. There were all sorts of issues around that, including that hotels can't apply their own chemicals unless they have licensed staff on the premises. So pest managers were definitely our target audience, which made us a B2B company.
Or business to business. A business selling to businesses, right?
Exactly. So once a business adopts your product, then they keep buying it. And it means that your advertising campaign and your need to continually find new customers, it's a completely different strategy, because you look after the customers you've got and then expand from there. So this whole course really was revolutionary, because it changed my perception of what business was all about. And it enabled me to put it into a logical format that gave me the confidence that we could then take our technology and commercialize it ourselves. So it really was the most fantastic experience.
So Andrew, he really is here, by the way. Andrew, you've known Nina for a long time. You heard what she just said about learning about business. What made her so successful? A lot of academics try to run a startup and don't do as well as she did.
Yeah, I've known Nina, I guess, maybe 20 years or more. I've always thought she was very driven to make a real world difference. She wanted to do things that would make the world better. She's a super curious person, so she's always got an eye out for something odd or something striking, which I think is what led to the bedbugs interest. But perhaps most unusual for a professor, She doesn't mind. She, in fact, loves learning. And you can just hear what she was talking about there with the Ben Franklin program. She doesn't mind going back to square one and learning things. And that's not always something professors are comfortable with. They become experts, and then they're not very teachable or trainable. Whereas she was open to learning all sorts of things about the business side of things. And that's very, very different, I think, from many professors. She's also one of the most persistent people I know. So when she gets into problems or something's not working, she loves to troubleshoot. And I think with this particular product, there was a lot of applications, early ideas about applications that didn't work, and lots of frustrations and so forth. But she's a very persistent person. And you can tell that because, with this product, you have to start going into places and figuring out why isn't it working in certain circumstances. And I believe that led her into some of the most, well, to my eyes anyway, disgusting locations where she was trying to figure out why things weren't working. Maybe, Nina, you could tell us a story or two about, what's your most disgusting experiences with bed bugs?
Well, first of all, they were all wonderful experiences because I learned from every single one of them. And, disgusting. I felt so sad for some people because, first of all, I should say most bedbug infestations are not serious. They're not the ones that you see on the internet, but some of them are. So, of course, I have seen these really terrible infestations. And, it breaks your heart to see people living under those circumstances, whether it's because of mental illness or because of mismanagement from their housing managers who probably take the lowest bid from pest control companies who then don't have the time to invest. But one situation that was early on in my investigations into the field, as it were, I went to an empty apartment. Well, it wasn't empty. It had been vacated. The landlord had evicted the tenants because of their refusal to allow pest control into the property. And those tenants had just left, and they'd left pretty much everything there. They must have walked out with a suitcase. And I walked into one of the bedrooms, and there was a bed there with blankets and a pillow. And the pillow had the indentation of a person's head. And normally, if people don't wash their sheets or their pillowcases very often, you get this sort of like yellow stain around where the head goes and everywhere else appears cleaner. It was the opposite in this situation. So there was the indentation of the head, and all the way around there was a halo of blood smears and bedbug poop depicting the shape of the head. There were so many bedbugs in this bed that as I lifted the blanket, bedbugs were scattering to find darkness because that's what they'll do. And it was extremely alarming, but possibly the most alarming thing was next to the bed, there was an enormous pile, and I'd call it a mountain, that peaked higher than the level of the bed, of used Kleenex tissues that clearly had not been cleaned up for many years. Well, I don't know. Maybe this person had a very bad cold, but it was actually, that element was more revolting than the bed bugs, to be completely honest with you.
Well, it sounds so gross.
Wow, that's quite a story, Nina. Have you ever walked into a situation where it was difficult to fix, where you couldn't figure out why the bed bugs were there?
Yeah, so part of our service was always to have a phone helpline to help the industry. So all of our users who use Apprehend always had me available on the end of the line to ask questions and say, hey, Nina, I've got a real problem here. It's not doing what it normally does. So I would always use this as an opportunity to get out into the field if I possibly could and find out what was going on. The reasons for failure can be really, really difficult to identify. So there were some very interesting ones. One of them was a PMP who's very successful with Apprehend, but this one gentleman's apartment, he kept coming back, and every time he came back just to verify that everything was good, he was finding live bed bugs in bed. There weren't any other bed bugs sort of in the structure of the bed or in the areas where he knew he had treated, but always he would go back and he would find bed bugs in the bed. And one of the things that the customer is supposed to do, the person with the infestation, is to launder their bedding at high heat. It can just be in the dryer. It doesn't need to be laundered. And the client there said, yes, he had done that religiously. He promised he had done that. And then he did say, but I did notice that my gun looks pretty dirty. And he got out a Glock and he showed us his gun, which was completely packed full of bedbug colonies. And he said, of course, I sleep with this under my pillow every night. So is this the problem?
Wow.
So, well, yes, that is the problem. And of course, the poor PMP never saw the Glock, because when he went to do his treatment, the guy had stripped his bed and he'd taken the Glock away for safety or whatever. But he would go back, make the bed with clean linens and put the infested gun under his pillow. So you never know, as I always say to our customers, what's going to come back to bite you. Bedbug control is not about one single product ever. It's about integrating a number of techniques, being able to think on your feet as a pest management professional and identify the techniques that you need for that particular situation. Apprehend is always a good product to have there for its residual, because it sits there waiting for the bed bugs to come out. But if you've got visible bed bugs, you can suck them up with a vacuum. That's my recommendation for anything that you can see. But then you need the residual to get the bed bugs you can't see. And that's where Apprehend is really the best product.
We're talking with Nina Jenkins, founder of ConidioTec, a Pennsylvania company that has a natural, non-toxic bedbug-fighting product. We'll take a short break and be back to hear more about how Nina built the company and how Penn State helped her get her sea legs for doing it. This is Kathleen Gallagher, host of Midwest Moxie. We're back with Nina Jenkins and Andrew Reed. Nina is founder of ConidioTec, a Pennsylvania company with a natural, non-toxic bedbug-fighting product. And Andrew is at Penn State, which was key to Nina building this company. Let's move from the disgusting bedbug stories to how you grew the company. You were selling to businesses. It was a business-to-business play. What were the challenges of selling to it? I would imagine pest management is a pretty established industry in the United States. How did you go about getting these pest management companies to use a new product?
Yeah, exactly. You're right on the money there. Pest management professionals are highly skeptical of new products, particularly ones that sound too good to be true, and rightly so. So we did go through a period of significant skepticism from the industry. Even some of the university extension staff from across the US were skeptical that this fungal product could really do what we were describing. We started out going to the annual pest association meeting called Pest World. It was in Baltimore in 2017, and we set up our booth. And yeah, we were hit with some pretty tough customers who felt that we were trying to sell them snake oil. But thankfully, we had Stuart Fain from Our Pest Control, who had invested in the company, and he came to our booth, and he was one of our first users, obviously. And as a pest professional, who was respected, he was able to talk to others in the industry and somewhat convince them that his company used this product, and he was absolutely blown away by how effective it was and that they should at least give it a try. Fortunately, we were able to convince some people, and as gradually the word spread, we were able to start expanding our business. And we also supported all of those early users. I was available always on the phone to answer questions. We provided videos that people could take from YouTube and watch in 10-minute sections. We didn't make a great big long video. We cut it up into little snippets so that they could dip in and out and do it in bite-sized pieces. And training and personal training was a really big component for us for getting the word out and helping the industry to adopt the product, because it was actually a very different method and protocol that we were recommending for bedbug control. So we needed to provide the science as a background in a digestible form so that everybody could understand why we were asking them to change their protocols and how that would benefit them in the long term through reducing the amount of time that it takes to control a bedbug infestation.
Well, yeah, these were people who were used to spraying everything, right? And you were saying, no, you need to spray these certain areas because this is where the bedbugs are going to walk.
Exactly, yeah. And trying to explain that by enabling their customers to do less prep so they don't have to spray everywhere, they're probably going to be offering the most attractive service. If there's competition on which pest control operator you're going to employ to control your bedbugs, the one that's going to ask less of you and is going to spend less time in your home is going to be the better one. And it took a while to convince people. And it was a bit of a leap of faith, because it seemed like, they had to work so hard to get bedbugs under control. And we were saying it doesn't need to be that hard. You can achieve this with less. And as people adopted it, and we went back to the next Pest World in 2018, we were at the booth not only with Stuart, but we'd have customers who had tried the product over the previous year come to the booth and hear us talking to new PMPs who were interested and actually take over our job of selling the product. So they would go, excuse me, let me just say, this product is amazing. And then talk to their competitors about how the product worked and how it had changed their business. So it was really exciting that time as we moved from the skepticism into this sort of support network where our users almost became disciples. It was great. And I've always made every effort to support our users in any way they can. So like making field visits, even if it meant traveling, so that we could get to the bottom of things.
You operated ConidioTec for 8 years with just 4 full-time employees and a network of independent sales reps. And it grew to about 10% of the U.S. market and maybe 40% of the Canadian market. The Canadian sales actually grew faster than the U.S. sales, to the point where they almost equaled U.S. sales. Why is that?
Yeah, Canada has a very different regulatory system. It's very expensive to register chemicals for pest control in Canada, but they, like the US Environmental Protection Agency, do have a softer route for lower risk pesticides like biopesticides. So we were able to put our registration dossier through that route, but it still took some time. And the Canadians were watching the American launch of Apprehend, and we were getting daily emails from Canadian pest controllers saying, why is this not available in Canada yet? Is there anything you can do? So when we were eventually able to launch it, and I think it was early 2020, maybe end of 2019, the Canadian pest control industry were absolutely ready to take this product on. They'd heard about it from the US and they were ready to go. So sales grew extraordinarily quickly, partly because they have very few products available because of the cost of registering chemicals. So they have far fewer choices than the US pest management industry. And then they'd heard all about Apprehend and it was now available. So it just grew so quickly. It's amazing. And we only sold through distribution to Canada, and we were selling pallets and pallets of product over the border. It was exciting.
Andrew, you've watched this transition that Nina has gone through, and I would imagine there has been one, the transition from academic to business person. Can you talk about how you view that?
Sure, there's been a transition. But I would still say that the same Nina that was there that I knew 20 years ago is responsible for this. She's had a fantastically interesting journey, I think, and made the most of all the opportunities that came along with that. I guess one of the big things is that as the commercialization gets more and more advanced, the amount of time and energy to put into more traditional scholarship goes down. But that hasn't troubled Nina, and she's been, and as far as I can tell, more and more enjoying it as it went along, actually. And I'm really pleased with the way the journey's worked out for her, and it's great that she's going to have a very comfortable next phase of life because of this. And I hope that lots of faculty at Penn State learn from this story just what could be done in the real world for everybody's benefit.
Yeah, she's a great role model. I can see that. Nina, let's face it, you're a celebrity in the pest control industry. You're doing continuing education training at industry association meetings. You're working the booth, like you said, at Pest World, creating these YouTube videos, providing on-demand virtual webinars, going on call when there's a big problem. Does that all end now that you've sold Apprehend?
Well, I am maintaining the helpline at the moment, the tech support line for Rockwell, and I'm training their salespeople to be the tech support. It's a gradual phase out, but I want Apprehend to succeed in Rockwell's hands, and they are by far the best company to take this forward. So it's going to work out great.
It's an amazing story of translating academic research into a super useful product for the world. And it's been such a pleasure hearing your story. Thank you, Nina and Andrew, for sharing it with Midwest Moxie.
Thank you.
You can read more about today's guest by visiting wuwm.com. Don't forget, you can also listen to the show as a podcast if you'd like to take us on the go. Just search for Midwest Moxie, that's MOXIE, wherever you listen to your podcasts. I'm your host, Kathleen Gallagher. Midwest Moxie was created by executive producer Audrey Nowakowski and me. Today's episode was produced by Audrey Nowakowski and engineered by WUWM's Jason Reevey. Join us next Sunday at 7 p.m. to hear from more visionary Midwestern founders building innovative companies. That's right here on 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR. Support for Midwest Moxie comes from Microsoft, whose efforts to drive technology development across the Midwest and beyond include its National TechSpark community engagement work, which started in Wisconsin, its role as co-founder of Titletown Tech in Green Bay, and its new AI co-innovation lab at University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. More information is available at Microsoft.com. Support also comes from Quarles, a multidisciplinary AM Law 200 firm with approximately 550 attorneys who support large and small businesses, from Fortune 500 companies to startups and entrepreneurs across the country. More at Quarles.com.